which is coming here and it is affecting the state of New York. Governor Andrew Cuomo has resigned and he will be leaving office in 2 weeks. This is coming after the allegations of sexual harassment were proven true from the Attorney General. My question to you is, as a woman and as a public official, how is this making you feel? And do you think he finally took the right decision?
Look, I think this is a decision that the governor should have made weeks ago, whether it was to allow for the investigation to continue or whether it was just to put the people of New York first. This is the right thing to do. In the Assembly, we were conducting our own investigation, looking at not just the issues around the sexual harassment, but also the possible misuse of public funds to write his book, and the possible lying, basically, when it came to reporting how many people died in the senior living facilities from COVID. And so, it came as a little bit of a shock, because while I thought that eventually he would resign, I didn't think that it would be now. But I do think that it's the right decision so that our state can move forward in recuperating from COVID.
Yes, there is so much work to be done. But, I have to ask you, the Me Too movement is huge in the state of New York. Governor Andrew Cuomo himself has supported it. You have supported it. So many women are supporting this movement. What does it mean for the movement when you see him resigning finally, but saying things like he thought it's a cultural difference, that he didn't know that he was actually, making the women uncomfortable? Do you agree with that? I think we have come way far from that, where he should have adjusted to the way that he needs to be held, accountable for his actions.
You and I come from cultures that love to embrace our family members. I think blaming this on culture is a little bit problematic, and it's disrespectful, frankly, because we have many family members who understand the difference between an appropriate hug and an inappropriate hug. And if he can't understand that difference, there's a problem here. So for me, it's more about the people and the survivors than it is about movement. While I get that the whole idea behind Me Too has helped raise awareness, raise voices, I think it's about the survivors, the victims who have had the courage to come forward and say, this happened to me and this is not acceptable and this should not continue. So my heart goes out to the many women, not only the 11 women in his report, but I can guarantee you that if they found 11, there were more that probably didn't come forward because they were fearful. And I understand that. And I send them all my respect and my love. And I look forward to seeing the day when you and I can show up to work without having to worry that someone's going to comment on our appearance instead of commenting on how good we are at our job.
Right. Unfortunately, as you said, this could be a story of hundreds of women that are working in public office and politics of sexual harassment, from their bosses. What do you say to women that want to come forward now with this story? This may be giving them a little motivation to say, hey, maybe I can try this, maybe somebody could hear me. What do you say to them?
I say to them, you are not alone. Unfortunately, it's happened to all of us. We've all been sexually harassed in one way or another. Someone has undermined how good we are at our job because we may look a certain way and treated us less than fairly. And what I say to the women that have had to endure that is, if we can go after the governor of the state of New York and demand that he respect women and step down because he hasn't, then we can help you.
Yes. What kind of changes would you like to make through the Assembly and the power that you have for this particular cause, for the cause of Me Too movement? Because, we have marches every year, Assemblywoman, but it seems like it just gets worse.
I will say that the culture in Albany and the legislature has improved tremendously. We have more women, more young women who are in office and are demanding that we be respected and treated fairly and be treated not based on how we look, but on who we are and what we bring to the table. And I think, we also have packages of bills in the State Assembly and the Senate that tackle the issue of workplace sexual harassment and hold people accountable for those things. And my hope is that this will provide more fire to that conversation so we can pass that package next year.
Yes, that's so important because the voices have to be heard here. The justice has to be served. Let's talk about your district now. I have plenty of questions here. Let's first talk about vaccinations. I'd like to know in the areas around Jackson Heights, because that's where most of your district lies, what is happening with the vaccination rates? Are you also seeing a low vaccination rate issue there? And also, what do you have to say about raising that awareness? Which communities need this awareness the most?
So I want to talk specifically to my South Asian neighbors who I have the utmost respect and love for. I think we've increased our vaccination rate by a lot, but there's still so much more that needs to be done because there's a lot of misinformation. I heard recently that in our community, in a location called Diversity Plaza, which is where our South Asian uncles will go and just hang out, that there were people giving out flyers about vaccinations killing people and that vaccinations don't really work. That is all lies. I want everyone who's watching us right now to understand that vaccinations save lives. Fortunately, Jackson Heights is now at a 60% rate of vaccination for 2 vaccines, and 80% of our neighbors got at least 1. I want to see the day where it's 100% of us. And so we have Elmhurst Hospital right there. We have several vaccination vans and buses and pop-ups. I want to see everyone out there. I want to see our aunties, our uncles, our family members go out, get vaccinated. Because what we want is next year to be able to be all together, healthy, and in a much better place.
Right. Assemblywoman, communities of colors have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, but not only by the pandemic, but also about vaccine distribution. What are your comments on that? And, has that problem sort of resolved in your district at least?
Well, early on, it was horrific. It wasn't bad. It was horrific. Our neighborhood had the highest rate of deaths and the lowest rate of vaccination. So, back then I teamed up with fellow electeds around the neighborhood, and we demanded that both the governor's office and the mayor's office provide more vaccinations, location sites, pop-ups, and it's actually resulted in increasing that number greatly. And I'm very, very proud to say, as I said before, that now 80% of Jackson Heights has had at least 1 dose of the vaccine and 60% too.
Oh, wow. Those numbers sound so good because
it wasn't like this 2 months ago, I got to tell you. Yeah. I'm very happy to see my neighbors are listening. We got to do more work,
right?
But they're listening.
Yeah, that's so important. I think New York is listening. I wish other parts of the country were also listening. New York mayor has announced this vaccine mandates for indoor restaurants, gyms, entertainment venues, for performances, where they're going to require at least 1 dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. Do you stand by that? And, how are you going to make this happen in the Jackson Heights area?
Look, I think we're going to work together with the mayor's team closely to help educate the business owners on how to communicate this to the public. But it's going to be up to our neighbors. You want to go out and dine? That's fantastic. You can go out and dine, but you got to get your vaccine.
Yes, that vaccine is so important. People can go on vaccines.gov for more information. Let's now talk about back to school, Assemblywoman. I know you've been meeting up with the communities, distributing, free backpacks, really raising awareness about, the safety protocols. I'd just like to know what is the plan of Jackson Heights area and your plan to make sure that schools are safe and all the COVID-19 protocols are being followed, and will the students be masked in the school?
So that is up to the Department of Education, Department of Health, and the mayor. Right now the conversations have been that yes, students will be required to wear a mask when they're in school. And we're also asking parents that if your child is of age, which is 12 and above, get them vaccinated. We want them to be healthy. We want them to be safe. We want you to be healthy and to be safe. So at my community events, we're having one in each of the neighborhoods I represent to give out backpacks, to give out information. And we're going to team up with the mayor's office also to provide either appointments or connections to vaccines, because we want everyone to be vaccinated. And so we are going to work closely with our local schools to make sure that we get the information out. And we're proud to continue to support our community.
Right, but I would like your point or your focus on the masking. The recommendation from above has also come saying that, everyone should mask in a school regardless of the vaccination status, because there are a lot of children that are just not eligible to be vaccinated. What do you say to that?
I think it's a must. Unfortunately, right now, while I understand people's needs for freedom of choice, I understand more people's need to survive. And if you want to send your kid to school, you're going to have to mask them. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. There are a lot of concerned parents who may have eligible children for the vaccine but just have not taken that step yet. What's a message to them? How can we really motivate that community? Because we are seeing very low rates of vaccination amongst them.
I think one of the things we want them to remember is most of us have had our vaccines from when we were kids for a number of other things. We're fine. We're perfectly fine. And there's been no indication in research or studies that the vaccine for COVID-19 for younger children presents any problems. So if your child is 12 and older and you want to make sure they stay healthy, get them vaccinated. Especially as we see the increase in the Delta variant, we don't want our children to die. Yeah. We don't want them to. We want them to go to school, to grow up healthy, to be some amazing reporter, lawyer, politician, doctor, whatever they want to be. It is your responsibility as a parent to go out and get them vaccinated.
Have you heard any news for a potential of shutdown if this variant keeps on spreading and the vaccinations aren't meeting the expectations? Not yet.
Not yet. I mean, it's not out of the question. Think about what has happened over the last year and a half. Yeah. But there hasn't been. I think what's happening is we're hoping that people will be conscientious and go out and get the vaccine and put on their mask and do what they need to do so that we can avoid that.
Yes, for sure. Let's now talk about the economic recovery of your district. I'd like to know what kind of help do you still need from state and federal government, and has the position improved since the last time we spoke on this?
Look, I think it's going to be very difficult to know exactly the state of the impact until at least the end of this year, because many businesses have reopened, but it's not clear how long they're going to be able to stay open for. I want to see our state and our local government taking a bigger lead in helping us do outreach to small businesses to help them hire more workers, apply for grants, ensure that they have the safety protocols, especially now that we're going to put together a mandate. I want to see them more on the street. I go out all the time. I go out every couple of weeks with the business chambers, with the Bangladeshi Business Association. I go out with everyone. I want to see our local government doing the same.
Yeah, a lot of South Asians, as you said, make up for these small business communities. What's their biggest issue right now?
Rent.
Rent.
And it's been like this for a long time. Commercial rents are so expensive. And so if you have a location that has a very high commercial rent, and for a year or so, you couldn't open up your shop, how are you going to pay rent?
Right, that's so true. And with the economic recovery, I'd also like to know about the issue of food insecurity. New York faced terrible issues of food insecurity since last year. How is the condition in your district? What are you doing for it?
So we are continuing to do various partnerships with community groups to do food distribution. Like we partner up with one of our local schools, and we recently passed a bill that will provide $50 million for food pantries. I'm sorry, the word escaped my brain. And we passed a law that would make that funding source permanent, because what happens every year is we would have to fight for it. But now if the program becomes a permanent program, we are able to help fund these food distribution sites. And important for our South Asian neighbors, one of the things that we're pushing for is to ensure that at least 20% of that money can be used to help organizations that provide halal as well as kosher food. More than halals for our South Asian friends.
Yeah, it's so important to have that food. Now I'd like to discuss a very important issue with you. It's actually an issue of national interest, the increase in gun violence. We have seen reports come from New York. It affects community of colors. It affects everyone around us, honestly speaking. How are you looking at it? What needs to be done in order to tackle this issue?
Look, I think everyone immediately assumes that the best thing you can do is get more cops on the street, but that's not going to resolve the issue. The reason why people pick up guns and go out on the street with them, illegal guns, has nothing to do with the amount of cops that are out in the street. So what we need to do is invest more money in education, invest more money in the kind of community services that stop violence before it occurs. And that's why I'm going to give you a little bit of a premiere. That's why I have advocated, and I'm going to be receiving, it's going to be about $40,000 for programs that do violence intervention and gun violence intervention in my district. We're finalizing the details, that's why I haven't released it, but it's going to be programs that help with that issue.
What's your take on gun reform laws?
Like, I think there is absolutely no reason for someone outside of law enforcement to have a gun. So if we need to be passing legislation that prevents people from owning guns that are not in law enforcement, and if you're in law enforcement, you should only have your weapon when you are on the job.
Yeah, that's so important. Yes, that's so true. I just have a couple of questions left here for you. I'd like to know what your focus is for the next 2 months. While so many the changes that are happening across the state, there's so much going on. What are you focused on the most?
So I will be fully honest with you. I don't know. And I don't know because the shock that we received today,
right.
My plan had been over the next 2 months, I'm going to be finishing up the investigation. I'm going to be looking at a possible impeachment. We're going to be working hard. And now after today, I have to go back to do the job that I love to do, which is work for the community. So I'm going to be meeting with my team to discuss what priorities we have in the community to make sure we are delivering services for the people who need it.
Yes, for sure. You know, where do you think the South Asian community right now is struggling the most? And what resources are available for that particular issue?
So I think there's 3 major things. One is food insecurity, as we mentioned before, especially because very few food pantries provide culturally appropriate food for our South Asian neighbors. Small business services, because we have small businesses that are, as many South Asians that own small businesses who've struggled throughout the pandemic and paying rent. Because we have many people who have not been able to pay rent because of everything that's happened. And so now we are working to make sure that they can apply and they can get those services.
Yeah, issue of rent, that's absolutely very important. 2 more questions left here for you. I hope you can answer this one. Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams is the Democratic nominee for New York City Mayor and is hopefully projected to win in November. What is your take on it? And, you know, where do you think you and him align on issues?
Look, I think we both want the best for New Yorkers. We find sometimes similar routes, sometimes different routes. I saw the work that he did during the pandemic and how dedicated he was, and I'd like to believe that we are aligned in hearts that way. I vote Democrat, and I'm going to vote Democrat, and I'm supporting him as our Democratic nominee.
Yeah, great. And my last question to you actually is a cultural one. It's India's Independence Day this Sunday. There are a lot of Indians living in your district. I would love for you to give a message out to that. And also, you know, what do you have to say about the communication and the interaction you've had with the Indian American community here?
Look, I think all of my South Asian friends and family, because I like to consider myself a family member of our South Asian folks, have been fantastic. But I have to say our Indian brothers and sisters have been just really, really caring, especially during the pandemic. They've reached out to us. We've reached out to them. Their small businesses have been out there trying to survive, and we're going to support them. And what I like to do is not only wish them a happy Independence Day, but encourage them to go out to get vaccinated and reach out to our office if they need help.